G'day guys, back with the Outer Circle. In today's episode, I want to talk a bit about the winners and losers so far in the Horus Heresy tabletop game. Now, before I get into the video, this particular episode is about the Marines, the faction we've had the most time with on the tabletop so far, and we've had the most opportunity to actually get our heads around how they're performing. On top of that, this is not about the whole win at all costs strategy. This is more about the whole point that some things are just suboptimal or bad, and I don't want people to, unless they just want to do something, I don't want people to waste their money by making a poor choice. You might see something and think, oh, that looks awesome, I just want to have it and paint it. That is perfectly fine, and in fact, that's a great thing. But sometimes you get something on the promise of, say, like a Warhammer community article. You look at it and you go, oh, wow, this looks really, really strong. I think I should get that because I think it'll be good for my army. And then, of course, you get it, and in reality, it is not at all that good. So, with that in mind, obviously, I've put up just generic Forge World page on here, but I picked Legion tanks because tanks in particular, I think, really do deserve to be the starting point. Many tanks are not very good anymore, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that in this edition of the game, they are perpetually afraid to give anything the ability to kill Marines, in the form of blasts and templates, to be specific. So something like the Vindicator, for example, which I'll try and bring it up on screen. So the Legion Vindicator is probably the biggest example of that, where you've taken something that was very strong in the previous edition. You could argue whether it was too strong. There's opinions for and against that. Obviously, it could be played around against. You could damage mitigate in ways against it, down to positioning, where you put your models in the battlefield, what anti-tank choices you have, There was a strategy there. Unfortunately, though, the Domus Pattern Vindicator in the current edition of the game is absolutely awful. I used to have a series that, we started it, but it didn't gain much traction. Some people loved it for the original game called Is It Shit? And this would be getting a firm it is shit if it was being used for the current game. Because this weapon went from having a large blast, strength 10 template with AP2, which made it quite capable of killing Terminators, it could kill Custodes, it could kill or any kind of power armor or militia unit you could think of. It was a fantastic weapon. And unfortunately, it went from that kind of level of firepower down to a higher strength, yes, like it can instant kill a land speeder, but they're very easy to kill, even bolt guns will do it. It went to a strength 12 weapon, but it's only a 3-inch blast. Now, yes, it has Sunder, yes, it's Brutal 3, yes, it's Rending, but it is very hard to hit more than one model with this weapon now, especially with the changes to unit coherency. Skirmishing units that have 3-inch coherency against a person who is using the full 3 inches, you hit one model. I watched the game yesterday. A friend of mine actually was playing and he was updating me of his battle as they were going. And his 2 Vindicators managed to kill, I think it was 4 models in the entire game. So this is definitely one of the vehicles that has really disproportionately suffered in this edition. Another one I have to give honourable mention to would be the Dreadhammer Siege Cannon on the Typhon. Yes, incredibly strong weapon, but suffers from all the same things as this. Basically, it is in the same position this edition as the Vindicator was in the last edition. That's how much of a nerf the Typhon got. And this is a problem because the one reason you would take these units is not to kill power armor. You take these units in order to kill Terminators and heavy infantry. The stuff which has the 2+ armor saves. I think Terminators, command squads, Legion specialist units, that kind of thing. Anything in the Legio Custodes. This is one of the most effective units for fighting them. And with the changes to them, it doesn't matter that they're brutal because often, especially shooting heavy units like a Terminator, well, it's brutal 3, make 3 armor saves on the one guy I hit. It's like, okay, 3 rerollable 2-ups. Chances are you're going to pass them. So that high strength and the brutal really doesn't come into play. However, these vehicles, there's a little caveat, and this applies to multiple vehicles this episode, these vehicles are incredibly strong against the militia and specifically the Imperial Army Solar Auxilia, because they may have been very heavily nerfed, but those forces are full of infantry tightly packed together, and the AP values that have changed on these vehicles, they are still just as deadly against the Solar Auxilia, which is a shame. Another couple of vehicles that have really suffered this edition, the Legion Medusa and Basilisk. These two vehicles are absolutely atrocious, and let's think comparatively. So, what fits into the same sort of bracket as these vehicles? Well, I would say something like the Whirlwind Scorpius fits into the exact same bracket as these vehicles. Now, unfortunately for them, the Scorpius is a squadron as well. The Scorpius is also cheap, 120 points for the Scorpius. Now, unlike these guys, the Scorpius has a pretty damn good weapon. Its missile launcher, the Scorpius missile launcher, is a longer range than the Medusa, shorter range than the Basilisk, but the Scorpius is barrage, large blast, and with its rocket barrage, it can gain the pinning and the rending special rules. So for the points and what it delivers, it's just a better unit overall. The strength 8, the AP 4, it's not really a disadvantage, it's the same sort of strength. So now the Scorpius, which was renowned for having strength 8 AP 3 small blasts in the last edition, is on par or better than the Medusa and Basilisk giant siege guns because of the changes made to the game. So again, unless you really like the models, actively avoid them. Don't even talk about Phosphex, because basically Phosphex is also in a bad state. The only usable Phosphex round belongs on the Aquator, specifically the Aquator with the Morbus Bombard. And even then, that Phosphex shell that it's firing is only a small 3-inch blast. So yes, it's Crawling Fire, Lingering Death. Crawling Fire, Lingering Death will not hit 2 models if you fire it at models that are 3 inches apart. It just can't physically do it. That's the width of the template, is the coherency of the models in the unit. So don't fall into the trap of thinking, oh, that's probably pretty good. Speaking of which, the Spicular rocket system on the Aquator, say what you will about Games Workshop trying to sell you models based on their rules, but this perfectly syncs up with that, because the Aquator with the Spicular is a massive 7-inch blast, rending 6+, Ordnance 1, Strength 7, AP 4. This thing is one of the best templates in the current game because it's a very big blast. It's actually going to hit models. So yes, it won't instant death and double them out and things like that, but again, what are you trying to do with them? If all you're trying to do is kill power armored marines, because that's where these things really shine, thanks to 2+ rerollable armor saves and terminators, if you're just trying to kill tactical squads or militia squads, the Aquator Spicular is one of the best tools in the arsenal for saturating an area, thanks to that big 7-inch blast. Yes, it has downsides, it has the limited ammunition, but come on, it's still got back up with 2 autocannons. It's a fantastic amount of firepower. Now, another unit, which, well, basically hasn't gone on well, is the Sicaran Omega. So just like the last edition, plasma weapons on the Omega are not very good. And in fact, they're not very good on the Derrideo Dreadnought either. So I guess we can sort of knock them both out at the same time here. So the problem with our Sicaran in general here is that it's relying on a plasma weapon, the Omega Plasma Relay, which has these 2 fire modes. One is essentially a Gravis Las Cannon. It's Strength 9, AP 4, Heavy 2, Rending 4+, but it gets hot. It has Plasma Burn special rule, so it will do like extra wounds and such, but it's not a very good weapon. Strength 9, AP 4. I'd rather, instead of the Rending, it was just Strength 9, AP 2. Just ditch the Rending special rule, make it simpler. But they can't have that, because then that means this thing would instant kill Terminators, and that's a big no-no in this edition. So it's also got an alternate fire mode, sustained fire, where you get to fire 8 shots at strength 7 AP4, breaching twin linked. Now this is on the verge of being useful. The problem with it is that the other stuff that's out there in the same sort of categories is so much cheaper. 230 points here to fire. I mean, let's ignore the breaching 4 plus. I'm not a big fan of breaching in general. I think plasma didn't need it. There were other ways of mitigating plasma. Strength 7 AP4, heavy 8. Let's look at something like Volkites. The Volkite Macro Saker is available on, say, a Saber. Give a Saber tank a Macro Saker and upgrade the tank, and I think it's somewhere, if you give it a Volkite Culverin, somewhere around 90 points. It's incredibly cheap. In fact, I'll check it now. It actually comes out at, with the hull front mounted Volkite Culverin, 15 points, so 95 points. For 95 points, you can put out a total of, let's see, 13 strength 6 AP5 deflagrating shots. They're probably going to do more for you than the Seeker and Omega, unless you're fishing for 4 pluses for breaching with the Omega, which is not a good choice, I don't think. I think we can safely say. So, it's still trash. And same with the Derrideo Dreadnought. The Derrideo Dreadnought, with its Hellfire Plasma Carronade, Sustained Fire and Maximal Fire, they love these twin fire modes. But it's in the same situation. It's relying on that breaching 4 plus. So, ironically enough, the only plasma weapon that really got better in this edition was the Plasma Cannon Dreadnoughts. For some reason, their Plasma Cannon is a special one that fires a large blast instead of a small blast, like regular pathetic Plasma Cannons. But a strange choice in here, and still not the weapon I would pick, is the alternate upgrade turret for on your Predator tank, which is the, it'll be on the Games Workshop website, so I can't show it to you right now, but that would be the Executioner Plasma Destroyer. For some reason on the Predator, they gave it a 60 inches range this edition, and it's no longer the 3 small blasts, it's just one large 5 inch blast, and it's rending, not breaching. There's a lot of strange choices in there with that weapon. Very strange choices in that weapon. But you probably cottoned onto something there, and that is the Saber. So the Saber went from being objectively worse in the last edition than the Javelin to objectively far better. Because of the way this edition was written, I will leave it up to you whether you think it was written well or written poorly. But the Saber, a tank, moves faster than a Javelin. It moves 2 inches faster with its base movement, and unlike the Javelin, which has the heavy special rule, the Saber can actually do a flat-out move, which is, well, it's better. Now, on top of that, the Saber has the ability to use a searchlight, which is handy, because night fighting is so prevalent in this edition. It's a good little unit to put it on that's sort of discardable, disposable. I think 2 of these, I think 3 is a bit much, but 2 of them definitely, with the Volkite Saker and the Volkite Culverin. Take the 2 of them together, and you actually have a really, really good amount of firepower here. You could even take a pintle-mounted combi weapon if you're really willing to spend more points and take a melted combi melter on it, if you want to go for like sly, sneaky vehicle hunting, but honestly, saturation firepower, they do it so well. That would be a good use for the Saber this edition. Now, one of the other vehicles which is in a funny place is obviously, as I was alluding to, with the the Hellfire, whatever it's called, Executioner Plasma Destroyer. Apologies. Is the Predator Squadron. So the Predator Squadron overall, 120 points for 3 hull points is pretty bad. So many vehicles have moved up in hull points this edition, like regular Sicarans are running 4 hull points now. Predators are just not in a great spot, and you really have to look at the weapons available to them. So if you want to go vehicle hunting, you could take, say, the Neutron Blaster. Well, the Neutron Blaster is just the pathetic cousin of the Gravis Las Cannon. And it doesn't sound right? Because the Neutron Blaster, it has the concussive and shock pulse, and it's got Sunder, and it's strength 10. All these things sound great on paper. But the problem is that, well, it's 24 inches range, so you got to get your predators close to fire it. And on top of that, shock pulse is so hard to actually pull off on enemy vehicles. People always talk about these shock pulse weapons, and they say things like, as I know they did in the previous edition of the game, oh, but if I fire these, I could shut down a whole Warlord Titan. And it's like, good luck. Good luck. You don't have enough shots. One shot is never enough with these sorts of weapons. A Predator is ballistic skill 4. That means you have a 60% chance, 60% chance, 2/3, of actually hitting in the first place before anything else. And then on top of that, if you're fighting something like Armor 14, you need to roll at least a 5 on your dice. So a 33% chance of actually getting a penetrating hit. And if it's flare shielded, put that up by another point. So you've got to roll a 6. So do you think needing to roll a 2 in 3 followed by a 1 in 6 is good odds of actually penetrating? I would say that is awful odds. When you have the Gravis Las Cannon array available on the exact same vehicle, take a Gravis Las Cannon, and it's going to cost you 5 points less, and you're going to get 2 shots. Yeah, okay, it doesn't have the Sunder, but you can punch from twice the distance away. And it syncs up better with your other 2 weapons, your 2 Sponson Las Cannons. Because if you're going to go for a Las Cannon on the turret, you may as well put the Sponsons to Las Cannons. But by the time you've done that, you get your 2 Sponson Las Cannons, and you make this completely lore inaccurate Predator, where everyone says, oh, well, it doesn't matter, it's got a twin Las Cannon turret, and that was established in the lore that it came later. It's just always been there. We'll just hand wave that because model sales. Anyway, that's just my saltiness creeping through. You have a tank here that's going to be the better part of 160 points. 160 points. You have now reached the price point of a Contemptor Dreadnought. What is a Predator doing better than a Contemptor Dreadnought? Well, it's got 2 extra las cannon shots over one, I guess, but it's got far, far worse survivability. Sure, a Contemptor in theory can be gunned down with bolt guns, but in theory, a Predator tank can also be gunned down with a bolt gun, just you have to shoot it in the rear armor. And since it has no save and only 3 hull points versus the Dreadnought's 2+ save, 5+ invulnerable, and it's 6 wounds, I would say that the Contemptor Dreadnought is probably better positioned to take these kind of hits. Plus, you're not going to instant kill a Contemptor Dreadnought. It just can't happen unless you get, say, 2 melter gun, multi-melter wounds through it once. You roll 2 6s on your D3s or something. Then it can be done. But a Predator with a multi-melter, it's a terrifying prospect. It is almost guaranteed to go through your armor, and it's almost guaranteed to instantly wipe you out or make you inoperable because you'll start getting things like stunned, which is a huge negative consequence. Another thing that they've absolutely failed in this edition to address is squadrons of vehicles. And while I'm doing the Predator, I may as well sideline myself to talk about it as a whole. Vehicle squadrons should not be taking leftover penetration hits from other vehicles being hit. You don't do it to dreadnoughts. Why would you do it with vehicles? If there are 2 land raiders in a squadron, one is on one side of the building, one's on the other, and they're both in coherency. You shoot your las cannons at the first one, the only one you can see. How come the other one blows up? Oh, well, those wounds are carried across because they're a squadron, those hull points. It's like, come off it. Come off it, okay? The hits should be declared on that specific vehicle. That's it. They should be treated as independent vehicles within the game for all intents and purposes. Just vehicle squadron riding is poor, and again, this is something that really hurts the Predator, because some of the Predators, with their firepower, you don't want them attacking the same target because it's a waste. So you end up in this situation where it's like, well, do I buy more Predator squadrons? Well, you don't want to do that because it's going to cost you an extra 15 points for a different predator, and it's going to take up another heavy support slot that you don't want being taken up. So, horrible situation. Then you've got other sort of weapons that seem just fantastic on the surface. The heavy conversion beamer. People look at, oh, conversion beamer is so strong, so powerful. Have a look at the stats on that. And it's like, yeah, at 42 inches to 72 inches range. It's strength 12, heavy 1, AP 1, and it's a large blast. That's amazing. That's the best template weapon in the game, practically. And then I have to ask the question, how many tables do you have 42 inches of line of sight on? Like, let's be honest here. That is a very rare occurrence. The table is only 48 inches wide, so unless you deploy right on the table edge with your predator and slightly diagonally away from a unit that's deployed in their table edge, you will not be getting those high strength shots against them. You're relying on a table that is devoid of terrain and open across the center of the battlefield to use that weapon effectively. So, just to reiterate, if you want to take it because you think it's cool, by all means, do so. But don't throw your money away by going out of your way to buy conversion beamers and put them on your units based on, just reading what it says on the paper and going, oh, that sounds good. Because the reality is, conversion beamers are mostly operating in the mid-range, that 18 to 42 inch zone. That's where most of them operate from. And in that zone, they're not very spectacular. Strength 9 is good, but AP 4. Gotta reiterate, so much heavy out there. Heavy is going to be the bane of your existence. So, back to more things on the Predator. Magnum Melter. The Magnum Melter changed. So the Magnum Melter is now a 3-shot weapon, I believe it is. Yes, heavy 3, 36-inch range, armor bane, melter twin linked. So the Magnum Melter was obviously a large blast, strength 8 AP1 melter weapon in the previous edition of the game. But again, that would kill Terminators, and we can't have that happen to the riders of the game. So melter weapon on this particular vehicle is now just 3 shots. So that giant, massive melter cannon. But meanwhile, a very similar looking weapon on the exact same tank, which happens to be called the, what was it again, that bloody Executioner Plasma or something? Yeah, Executioner Plasma Destroyer is stayed a large blast. And it's just a funny thing, right? Conversion Beamer, large blast. Plasma Executioner, large blast. And then the Magnum Melter, the weapon that's also into that same category, same size, same type of weapon, really. And like an energy weapon. Yeah, it's just 3 shots, buddy. Sure, why not? So that's not very good. Yeah, you just see a lot of this through the book. I won't go through every one of the options on the Predator, but essentially with Predators, I guess the last one I will talk about, because it's infuriating, is the Flamestorm Cannon. So the Flamestorm Cannon was a staple of Old Heresy as like a threat unit, and you would take box Dreadnoughts, or you would take a Predator with one. And what it was Strength 6 AP3 template, like a big flamer. And it was terrifying for power armor, so people would often focus that unit down and kill it. Well, now it's a Torrent 18 inches, which is interesting, because it means the tank can get a little bit closer than it otherwise would normally be able to use the Flamestorm. The problem is, though, that a Flamestorm cannon is only strength 6, so it's not instant killing Marines, even if you get past their armor. And it's only AP4, which means you're almost never getting past armor. And how many models are you going to hit? Well, with things like 3-inch coherencies, even with Torrent, it's not that many. Now, this is a huge problem in the game right now, is that the people who wrote this don't understand templates. All I can put it down to, because that weapon there is a downgrade from the autocannon, the amount of models it will on average hit. So how come it is that you actually have to pay points to take it? Because they didn't think through the consequences of their actions, especially in a heavy meta. If you hit, like Terminators, for example, you know that a template weapon in this game is about 8 inches long. So it's 8 inches and 2.5 inches wide at the widest point. How many Terminators, if they're correctly spaced out, will that hit? It's 3. So 3 Terminators. 3 Terminators with 2+ rerollable saves. You're not going to do any damage to them with this weapon. So then you look at Marines. Alright, what about Marines? Well, perfectly spaced out Marines, it's 4. So 4 Marines, 3+ normal armor saves. So you might get 1. Should you be buying a tank which is well over $100 and is going to be a minimum of 135 points to kill a couple of Marines? I would argue that no, it is a terrible investment. Now, if you still want to do it, like I am, by all means go for it. Just beware of what you're doing before you put your dollar to it. That's the big thing here. Another unit that is really a big loser in this edition is the Tactical Support Squad. So it's really, really disappointing to me that when they created the line special rule, they didn't think it through to its full conclusion, which is that because you've made units need line to be scoring, you end up with things like reconnaissance squads that are scoring, and you end up with units like the Tactical Support Squad, which are not. I mean, it's tactical support. Yes, they are a support squad, but they're still tacticals. They're still troops choices, and yet they can't hold down an objective. Isn't that just woeful? Because you then take this squad, and again, I think people looked at the last edition. They saw like 10 of these in a termite or something with plasma guns popping up and rapid firing all 10 plasma, and how devastating they could be. And they looked at that, and then they said, well, we can't have them doing that sort of tactic again. But it's like when you've done the nerf to the plasma weapons, you can't do that tactic anymore. And even if you did, there is so much free interceptor out there, and you have to jump out. Those tactical support marines, they're dying the minute they enter play. They're not even going to fire their weapons half the time. So they're absolutely useless in that role. So you're like, okay, what kind of weapon would be useful on them? Well, flamers, we've established, awful. The only decent flamers are salamanders ones, and even then, they're very particular, their situations. And to a lesser degree, I do like chem flamers, because at least they get lots of wounds. So the tactical support squad could take Volkites, I suppose, but there are lots of units that have access to lots of Volkite shots, and they're better than tactical supports for the points. At 85 points for 5 models, what sort of thing are they competing with? Well, at that kind of points, for just 15 more points, you could take a Legion Heavy support squad with the Heavy special rule. And you know what's funny? In some legions, like for example Imperial Fists, they're going to be scoring if you took the right console for your HQ choices. So the Heavy support squad, which has rerollable saves against blasts and templates, they all come with heavy bolters, versus the tactical support squad, which only comes with regular flamers. And, well, 5 heavy support guys is going to put out 20 heavy bolter shots, versus the flamers, who need to get right up to the enemy to try and score some maybe wounds with their flamers. Good luck to you in that endeavour. And it gets worse the more points you add, because, for example, a las cannon on a heavy support marine, well, an additional heavy support marine is 15 points, and the las cannon's 10, so that's 25. A tactical support marine is 12 points per additional one, and a melter gun is 15 points. So you're paying similar points if you take 10 tactical support marines with melter guns as you would if you took 10 Legion Heavy Support Squad members with las cannons. That's insanity. So, yeah, Tactical Support Squad, they're a loser, obviously, this edition. Another big loser in this edition has to be bikes. Just bikes in general. Bikes are in a really, really bad place because, again, I don't think people understood what made bikes magical in the last edition. That has made bikes magical since the days of 2nd edition 40k. And unfortunately, with only 30 years of experience to play with, it's probably too little time for the writers to digest it. So they think that bikes shouldn't have any toughness bonus. So what you now have is you have a marine who has, granted, slightly more firepower than a normal marine, but unfortunately for him, he is a target on the battlefield that is at least 4 marines in size, so way easy to get a line of sight to and, murder. In the case of a jet bike, he's land speeder sized. So, do you think that a land speeder sized unit is really the sort of unit that should be spearheading your formations in games? Toughness 4, 2 wounds. You know how much strength 8 is out there. It's not the templates and such you have to be scared of, so it doesn't matter that these units have the skirmish special rules, for example, on Outriders. It's not templates you've got to be afraid of, it's just anything strength 8. And this game has disproportionately incentivized the use of melter weapons in this edition because they're so effective against dreadnoughts and against vehicles. They're probably the best gun for fighting a dreadnought with. And on top of that, las cannons. There are so many las cannons that fire twice the shots they did in the previous edition now. For example, every Land Raider. How many Land Raiders have you seen with the triple Gravis las cannons on them? That's 6 las cannon shots. Your bikes aren't surviving that. No matter how hard you try, you don't have the damage mitigation available to you to do so. So, Legion Outriders, they're just awful. Absolutely awful. And the Sky Hunters are even worse. 30 points for a Marine with 2 wounds, but oh, he's fast and has a heavy bolter. Would you not rather a scoring assault squad for the same sort of points? I think I know what I would choose. So, yeah, that's the sort of situation we find ourselves in. Obviously, land speeders, exact same problem as the bikes. You shouldn't be finding yourself in a situation where your speeder can be instant death by so many things on the battlefield, and worse, 2 attacks in close combat. It's only a 3+ armor save, only has 4 wounds, so a javelin, which is bigger than a contempted dreadnought, has less wounds than a contempted dreadnought. So it's not mass that determines your amount of wounds, I guess. Must be related to armor save, who knows. It's just not in a good spot at all. But I will give a shout out here to some units that have come out considerably better in this edition. Recon Marines. Well, thanks to the most broken weapon in the game, the Nemesis Bolt Gun, Recon Marines are actually in a fantastic position, or anyone who can take them. The Nemesis Bolt Gun, for those who don't know what it is, and, well, you won't, unless you're playing Heresy right now. The old sniper rifles were rending 4+. The new ones are 72 inches range. On top of that, they are strength 5, AP 5, which means that, hey, if they fight something that the rending, for whatever reason, can't affect, the weapon will still do just fine. And with the rending 5+ and strength of 5, they're surprisingly good at killing light armored vehicles. They have the sniper and pinning special rules. What does that mean? Well, it means they can look at your squad, say your 1,000 Suns, for example. Here's a fun situation for you. They see your sergeant. They pick out your sergeant. And they put all of the wounds onto your sergeant. And if your sergeant doesn't survive those wounds, guess what, 1,000 Suns player? You obviously lose your sergeant, but you'll also lose the ability to ever use your Legion trait for the rest of the battle. Screw you, is what they're saying. And of course, the pinning is just the cherry on top. But 72 inches range, that is huge. The only thing outranging them is like Fellblades and Basilisks. And does that sound right? I don't think it does. 72 inches range is, they've doubled the range since the last edition. They are twice the range of a heavy bolter, for example. Now, I said before that you're not going to be using that full range on the conversion beamer, and I stand by that. You're not going to be using it on Nemesis bolt guns, but on the odd situation where it does arise, that range allows you to sit back outside of response range of the enemy for reactions. So it makes it very, very safe investment for you to start shooting their heavy support team for las cannons with Nemesis bolt guns if you're 49 inches away or more, because there'll be no response to it. They just have to sit there and take the pain. Another unit which has done really, really well in this edition has to be the Xiphon Interceptor. For 105 points, it is an insanely good vehicle. The 2 hull-mounted twin-linked las cannons. Strange they didn't just give it 2 Gravis las cannons, but anyway. It's firing 2 las cannon shots, but the real reason you take it is for the rotary missile launcher. The rotary missile launcher now, it's 60 inches range, which is basically you'll touch anywhere on the table. Strength 8, it's AP 2, it's Heavy 3, ignores cover, it's Twin Linked, and it's Exo Shock. So for every penetrating hit, it's Exo Shock 6 plus, I should say. So on every penetrating hit, you get that extra Exo Shock to go off on vehicles, which can be quite devastating. Way better vehicle than it was in the previous edition, where it is literally halved in points for slightly better weapons and identical stats. It's insanity what it has become. The Xiphon puts basically all the other aircraft to shame, except for maybe like a Thunderhawk. Another unit that has done probably really well in this edition, Aquator Bombard, as I was mentioning earlier. Very good position. I will say, though, that the Leviathan Dreadnought is a lot worse off this edition. Especially when it comes to its grav weapon. Its grav weapon was always in a weird place, where it was marketed as this ultimate in anti-tank, and it had 3d6 armor pen. Well, this edition, it's gone up to 4d6 armor pen, which is okay. Now it can actually hurt the vehicles in the game, on average. So that's a good start. But it's still rather short-ranged, and it's only going to do one hit on whatever it hits. So it's a really bizarre kind of weapon. Where it really comes into its own is, well, it's nothing this edition. It's another one of those really weird things, because in the last edition it just slaughtered anything with a good armor save, because it used your armor save against you. Now it's AP4. You'll be fine. You'll take wounds from it, yes, but you'll save those wounds, and if you're heavy, which again, the sort of units you would fire at last edition were Terminators. Well, yeah, it's the worst Leviathan weapon this edition. And not to be too cynical, but I'm noticing that a lot of the weapons that were in common use last edition just so happen to be kind of crap this edition. But that would be very conspiratorial to point out, so we won't go there. Anyway, that's just a very brief look at the winners and losers in the Legion army list. Just to reiterate the point I made earlier in the video, it's not about if you like it, it's not about playing to win, it's about making sensible decisions with your finances and with your models. You don't want to take something with the hopes and prayers of this can turn it around for me. You don't want to be taking your Legion Deimos Patent Vindicator, for example, thinking that it's going to give you a fighting chance against the Pride of the Legion 40 Terminator list across the table. It will not. You're going to die. You just have to accept that. If you're taking Vindicators to try and do the job of saving your ass anyway. So don't do it. You can't, and don't point out the exception. There is one thing I can't stand, and that is people who try and point out exceptions to rules to prove rules. Don't point out to me that a Deimos Patent Vindicator can kill a non-Iron Hands land speeder with one shot. That's the easiest fucking bar to clear in the world. Don't do it. What I want to see is a vehicle or a unit that is able to perform multiple roles on the battlefield and is able to earn its points back. If you're playing a game and the other person, in all likelihood, won't be taking speeders because they suck, then what is your Vindicator going to shoot at? Infantry? Good luck, you're going to kill less infantry by the time they get to you than the points cost of your vehicle, and your vehicle will die. So it is not a wise investment. And again, this is not because we want to win all of our games. It's because we don't want to give Games Workshop a bunch of money for an expensive vehicle that is unable to perform on the tabletop in any way, shape, or form. Something that is middling on the tabletop, for example, Sigger and Punisher. Okay, Sigger and Punisher, it's not an awful tank. It's not by any stretch of the imagination the best tank in the heavy support slot. It is firmly in the mid-tier, has a ton of shots, it can provide pinning firepower, which is great, but it can't really get through armor, so people get to make lots of saves against it, and you're just hoping that the volume of firepower will do the work. And of course, if you're the poor Solar Auxilia, this thing will just murder you, but then again, everything will murder you if you're Solar Auxilia. A Marine could light a fart with a cigarette lighter and it's going to kill 20 guys in this edition. So, there's that. Don't get it into your heads that everything has to be the ultimate be-all, end-all, okay? And one last little sort of point of salt before I go. Card it on there, on the screen. That's not in the Liber Imperium rules. So why is it still for sale and marketed as a vehicle available to them? I think that's false advertising right there. So you probably want to change it on the web store, considering it's currently not available for use in the game. Or is this going to be another one of those, we have the model available, but we're going to put it in the PDF for our legendary units at a later stage deals, and it's going to come out and it's going to be crap. Or it's going to be really good because it's a resin model and you want to make your money's worth. I don't know, people, but that's the sort of decision where I sit there like, why couldn't they have added that one page into the book? It's kind of like the Medusa and Basilisk. It even mentions them in Rights of War as key vehicles in the Black Book, but they couldn't put them in there. They had to put them in a PDF. Just horrible, some of the decisions that have been made here. So that's point of salt. I raise a point of salt for the day. Now, we will come back and revisit this series with both the Mechanicum and the Liber Imperium at a later stage, okay? But I can tell you for sure the Mechanicum have suffered horribly, as have the Solar Auxilia, and the Legio Custodes have suffered in bizarre ways, and the Sisters of Battle are just a completely different force to what they were in many ways. They're neither better nor worse, they're just a side shift. So spoilers, but I'm waiting for more. I'm waiting to actually see them on the tabletop and how they perform, and have people feed me back bat reps and video of their games, so I can really build a solid opinion on it before I bring it out to you. So apologies, but they won't be coming anytime soon. I will, however, get it out hopefully tomorrow, the last 3 episodes of the Getting Started in Horus Heresy series, part 3s. So Sons of Horus, Wordbearers, Alpha Legion, they are pretty much done. I've just got to actually put them out now. They were longer episodes to do because basically the Sons of Horus and the Wordbearers have more special characters than all of the other Traitor Legions combined, which is depressing and hilarious at the same time. Anyway, that's all for me. I'm back with the Outer Circle. See you all in the next one, I guess.